Who owns the gold beneath our feet, and who decides what it's worth? That question has haunted me for years. I've walked the marble halls of financial conferences in Geneva, and I've walked the dusty streets of Kiaka, Burkina Faso, where children play on the very land that holds one of West Africa's richest untapped gold reserves. I've seen gold chains glisten on necks in Brooklyn, Brixton, and the 9th arrondissement of Paris. But I've also seen the hands that dig it out, black hands, blistered and bare, paid pennies for every ounce extracted. Burkina Faso holds gold, real gold, but for decades, its people held none of its power. Like too many African nations, Burkina Faso's resources were licensed away to foreign multinationals, to shareholder boards oceans away, to systems designed to extract without returning value. But something changed, and it didn't begin with a handshake in a bank. It began with a shift in political will. In 2023, a government led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré made a radical decision to reclaim Kiaka, to turn a gold mine into a national act of self-determination. This is not a story about mining. It's a story about sovereignty, about black dignity, about a country that refused to be a pit stop on someone else's profit map. And now, as the gold begins to flow not into offshore accounts, but into schools, clinics, and cooperatives, the question returns. If we can control our gold, can we finally control our future? This is the story of Kiaka Gold, and it belongs to all of us. But to understand its power, we must first understand the theft. For decades, Burkina Faso was gold-rich in theory and debt-poor in reality. Kiaka, a vast deposit of high-grade ore nestled in the southeastern provinces, had long been mapped, sampled, and coveted, but never owned, not by its people. Instead, it passed hands like a casino chip across global finance tables, from Volta Resources to B2 Gold, from B2 Gold to West African Resources. Each time, the mine changed owners, but not beneficiaries. What Burkina Faso received in return were scraps royalties as low as 3%, tax loopholes wide enough to drive gold trucks through, and local development funds that built more resentment than roads. This wasn't investment. It was extraction, wrapped in paperwork, a colonial arrangement with digital signatures. The numbers tell a brutal truth. Between 2010 and 2020, Burkina Faso exported over $15 billion USD worth of gold. Yet over 40% of its population remained below the poverty line. Child malnutrition soared in mining zones. Mercury and cyanide poisoned water tables. And foreign companies legally paid less in taxes than small local cooperatives. Meanwhile, the workers, the real architects of the wealth, toiled without contracts, safety nets, or a stake in what they unearthed. Their hands dug the future for someone else's children. And it wasn't just Burkina Faso. This is a continental pattern, from Ghana to Mali, from DRC to South Africa. The story is eerily familiar. Africa exports raw gold and imports manufactured poverty. Because under global capitalism, who controls the hole in the ground controls the future above it. And for too long, that control belonged to foreign shareholders, not sovereign citizens. But history bends not by chance, but by choice. In Kiaka, that choice was finally made, not with permission, but with conviction. And that is where the new story begins. Kiaka had been studied, it had been surveyed, cataloged, and speculated upon. But until recently, it had never been truly claimed. That changed in 2023. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré assumed leadership of Burkina Faso, many in the international community scoffed. A young revolutionary soldier, in a landlocked nation under siege, with no major capital reserves. They didn't see what we saw. They didn't feel what we felt. They didn't believe what he believed, that a nation's dignity is worth more than its credit rating. that real independence requires economic control, not ceremonial flags. One of his first bold moves, a full sovereign reassessment of Burkina Faso's mining contracts and Kiaka, was front and center, where others had sold stakes. Traoré redrew the lines. He halted the fast-track licensing process. He demanded renegotiation under a new principle. No foreign company shall hold majority control over strategic national resources. The message was clear. Burkina Faso would no longer lease its future. It would mine it, mold it, and own it on its own terms. Thus, the Kiaka Sovereign Mining Consortium was born, a new model, majority Burkinabe-owned, local equity for workers and communities, a board accountable not to shareholders in Toronto or Perth, but to village elders, labor unions, and public auditors. Instead of handing over raw ore, the state invested in on-site processing capacity, bringing value addition home. Instead of outsourcing security, it deployed trained national forces to secure the site not just with arms, but with legitimacy. Instead of repeating the old host country script, Burkina Faso rewrote the contract between the people and their land. Yes, the technology was still sourced externally. Yes, there were risks, inefficiencies, and resistance. But for the first time, the operating logic was different. It was not, how much gold can we ship out? It was how much sovereignty can we build in? Because for Traoré and for millions who believed in this turning point, Kiaka wasn't just about wealth. It was about breaking the chain of dependence, about proving that Africans can govern their resources with dignity, competence, and vision. And most of all, it was about sending a signal to every village, every miner, every youth who had been told to wait. This land is yours. This gold is yours. And the future will be too. Change doesn't always come with explosions. Sometimes, it arrives in silence, in the rhythm of shovels, in the hum of machinery, in the quiet pride of a worker signing his first contract. By mid-2024, less than a year into the sovereign operation of Kiaka, the numbers told a story that no press release could fully capture. Over 120,000 ounces of gold had been extracted. But more importantly, for the first time, a significant portion of that wealth stayed in Burkina Faso. Unlike previous models where profits evaporated into overseas accounts, the new revenue-sharing formula allocated 45% directly to the national treasury, 20% to regional development authorities, and 10% to a newly created future fund earmarked for long-term investments in education, infrastructure, and health. More than 3,000 jobs had been created, over 30% held by women, many of whom had never before set foot in a formal workplace. Technical training programs, once outsourced or non-existent, were now being led in partnership with Ouagadougou Polytechnic, with young apprentices from across the country learning to operate, maintain, and eventually design mining equipment. One such apprentice, Aline Zongo, 22 years old, was among the first women promoted to lead a shift in the ore-crushing division. "I used to sell tomatoes on the roadside," she said, eyes fixed on the control panel. "Now I run a machine that moves 20 tons of rock per hour. My son thinks I'm an engineer." She smiles. She's not wrong. The sovereign model wasn't just about moving gold, it was about moving lives. As part of the new governance charter, 10% of net mining income was allocated to mandatory local reinvestment. That's not charity, that's structural justice. Already in 2024, that mandate had delivered. A fully equipped health clinic within 10 kilometers of the mine, staffed by both medical professionals and traditional healers. A technical vocational center focused on geology, metallurgy, and sustainable mining. New boreholes drilled for clean water in 3 surrounding villages. A youth mentorship program pairing Kiaka engineers with secondary school students. These aren't corporate social responsibility gestures. These are obligations, enshrined in the contract monitored by both state agencies and civil society. The Kiaka project has had ripple effects far beyond the mining site. Local transport businesses are flourishing. Food vendors and agricultural cooperatives have stable demand from on-site workers. Real estate development is accelerating in nearby towns. And for the first time in decades, migration out of the region is slowing because people are choosing to stay. In the words of a village elder from Bitu, we sent our children to the mines to die. Now we send them to the mines to work and to come home alive, with pride. But perhaps the most powerful result of all isn't economic, it's psychological. In a nation long taught to expect handouts, Kiaka is teaching something radical. We can build wealth from our own soil. We can run complex operations with our own minds. We can demand fair terms and win. Where once there was only cynicism, now there is confidence. Where once there was only survival, now there is vision. Burkina Faso has proven to itself and the world that gold doesn't have to mean dependency. It can mean dignity. It can mean direction. And it can mean a new kind of future owned, not borrowed. Kiaka was never meant to be the endgame. It was the spark, the first step toward a new model of African resource ownership, built not on dependency, but on design. With the sovereign framework now in place and proving viable, Burkina Faso stands at the threshold of transformation not just as a gold producer, but as a value creator, a regional hub, and a continental signal. Under the new development plan, the government has begun charting a roadmap to domesticate more of the gold value chain. A national refining facility is in early-stage planning, allowing Burkina Faso to export finished gold bars, not just ore. Negotiations are underway to develop artisan jewelry and precision manufacturing zones, providing a platform for local craftsmanship and global exports. Partnerships with vocational institutes are scaling up metallurgy, logistics, and automation programs laying the groundwork for homegrown industrial capacity. It's not just about keeping the gold, it's about keeping the skills, the profits, and the pride, regionally. Kiaka is acting as a magnet drawing attention and alignment from neighboring countries. The vision is emerging a Sahelian alliance for sovereign resource management, where Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso coordinate. Contract standards, joint training academies, cross-border trade infrastructure, and shared negotiation blocks in global markets. Imagine a West Africa where the wealth under the soil is negotiated together, not auctioned apart. Kiaka, in this context, becomes more than a mine. It becomes a geopolitical lever. And for the millions of Africans across the diaspora from Washington, D.C. to London, from Toronto to Martinique, Kiaka opens the door to a different kind of engagement. Not charity, not tourism, but investment. The Ministry of Economy is currently developing diaspora-backed sovereignty bonds tied to national gold reserves. Ethical investment platforms are being explored, with equity stakes in community reinvestment funds. And cultural campaigns are forming to reconnect the Black world with the material foundation of its liberation. We don't just want your money. A finance minister recently said, "We want your fingerprints on the new economy." The gold is there, the plan is taking shape, and the door is open. All that's needed now is for the people near and far to walk through it, and for the millions of Africans across the diaspora from Washington, D.C. to London, from Toronto to Martinique. Kiaka opens the door to a different kind of engagement. Not charity, not tourism, but investment with purpose. Burkina Faso's Ministry of Economy, in partnership with the Central Bank of the Sahel States, is now designing a diaspora wealth participation framework, including gold-backed sovereignty bonds, allowing diaspora citizens to invest directly in national reserves, with secure returns tied to global gold prices. Kiaka Impact Fund, a mixed public-private fund channeling diaspora capital into surrounding health clinics, schools, and vocational training. 1% for Home Program, a voluntary initiative where diaspora entrepreneurs commit 1% of business profits annually toward rural infrastructure powered by gold sector earnings. Digital ownership tools, blockchain-verified micro-investments that allow Africans abroad to co-own cooperatives, processing facilities, or green infrastructure tied to the gold economy. As one Burkinabe diaspora leader in New York put it, "We wear gold on our wrists and necks. Now we can wear it on our conscience as builders of the new Africa." This is not nostalgia. It is strategy. This is not about giving back. It's about building forward together. Let's be clear. Not everyone is cheering for Kiaka. When a poor African nation seizes control of one of the richest gold deposits in the region and does so without begging permission from former colonizers, global lenders, or corporate giants, the pushback is not hypothetical. It is predictable. And it has already begun. Multinational corporations who once circled Kiaka like hawks are now returning in a different form, not with drills, but with lawyers and lobbyists. Several Western-based mining lobbies have filed pressure briefs with regional trade blocs, accusing Burkina Faso of resource nationalism and investor hostility. Behind closed doors, donor agencies are quietly suspending non-mining aid, citing concerns over transparency. Meanwhile, consulting firms from Paris to Johannesburg are offering slick policy advice that always ends with foreign equity, privatization, and weakened state oversight. But the playbook is old. We've seen it in Zambia, in Bolivia, in the DRC. When the poor dare to act sovereign, the powerful suddenly remember their rules. Kiaka's success has also drawn attention from armed groups and destabilizing actors, particularly those who profit from chaos in the Sahel. The region is already under strain from climate shocks, insurgency, and fragile borders. A sovereign gold project, if left unprotected, could become a strategic target not just physically, but politically. That's why the government has had to invest not only in military defense, but in community legitimacy. Security built on trust is stronger than security built on force alone. Still, the threat is real, and it requires diaspora vigilance advocacy, media amplification, and international support to protect the project from sabotage or smear. Let's not romanticize the challenge. Burkina Faso is still building its technical ecosystem, and fast. Many machines are still imported. Refining technology is not yet fully local. Data systems, environmental safeguards, and quality controls are in early development. Skilled mining engineers, metallurgists, and regulators are in short supply. These are not signs of failure, but of a system still under construction. What matters is that the will to build exists, and that the process is transparent, accountable, and adaptive. Perhaps the most dangerous threat is discursive. Already, media outlets aligned with extractive interests have begun branding Kiaka as a nationalist vanity project, an unsustainable populist experiment, too risky for serious investors. This isn't journalism, it's containment, an attempt to delegitimize the African imagination before it becomes contagious. Because if Kiaka proves that gold can serve the people, what happens to their control over oil, diamonds, cobalt, lithium? What happens if Africans stop asking for development aid and start demanding control? The truth is this: Kiaka is a threat, not to the people, but to the system that keeps them poor. And the more successful it becomes, the more fiercely that system will fight back. But Burkina Faso is not alone, because as this mine goes deeper into the ground, a different kind of resistance is rising to the surface. Kiaka was never just a mine. It was a mirror reflecting back what was always possible, but never allowed. And now, it has become a signal fire. A fire that is visible across the Sahel. A fire that says we don't need to beg for wealth. We just need to own what's beneath our feet and decide what to do with it. Burkina Faso, under the leadership of President Ibrahim Traoré, is not acting in isolation. His bold stance has inspired a new regional alignment, where sovereignty is no longer a slogan, but a strategy. Together with Mali and Niger, Traoré has championed the creation of a Sahel Sovereign Resource Framework, a cooperative effort to audit all existing extractive contracts, standardize royalty rates across borders, build shared refining and transport infrastructure, train a generation of engineers, inspectors, and negotiators fluent in both geology and geopolitics. It is nothing less than the birth of a Sahelian economic doctrine owned by Africans, managed by Africans, benefiting Africans, across the continent and diaspora. Ibrahim Traoré is fast becoming more than a national figure. He is emerging as a symbol of generational change, young, unbought, unapologetically sovereign. Where others see risk, he sees responsibility.
Where others play defense, he builds architecture. Where others seek aid, he demands equity. His government is already in early talks with Guinea, Chad, and Togo, exploring how the Kiaka model majority public ownership, transparent profit sharing, localized value chains can be adapted to bauxite, phosphate, and rare earth sectors. And this isn't just about resource nationalism. It's about interdependence without subordination. A regional gold exchange is under discussion, freeing countries from dependence on London benchmarks. A Sahel Resource Investment Fund may pool diaspora capital from multiple nations. Coordinated environmental standards will ensure sustainability doesn't lag behind sovereignty. This is how you build African power without replicating colonial hierarchies. And it all began in the dust of Kiaka with a decision to believe in ourselves. If Kiaka succeeds, it becomes precedent.
If Traoré stays the course, he becomes more than a president. He becomes a blueprint for nations still trapped in investment-friendly contracts that disempower their people. A blueprint for youth who wonder if revolution can be practical. A blueprint for the diaspora looking not just for identity, but for impact. And as this model spreads across the Sahel and beyond, a question will echo louder with each mine reclaimed, each refinery built, each child educated on resource justice. If we can own our gold, what else can we own? When they write the story of this century not from Washington or Paris, but from Ouagadougou, they may begin it like this. There was once a gold mine, but it wasn't the gold that changed history. It was the people who decided it would never again leave without a fight. Kiaka is not just a project, it is proof. Proof that when we believe in ourselves, when we stop asking for development and start declaring dignity, things begin to shift. Ibrahim Traoré is not a strong man. He is a threshold figure standing between what Africa has been and what it can now become. He does not promise ease. He promises honor. He is not merely mining gold. He is re-mining our worth. In the West, they ask, can he last? Can this be sustained? But here, in the hearts of his people and in the minds of a reawakening diaspora, the question is different. Can we afford to go back? To our sisters and brothers in Brooklyn, Brixton, Montreal, Dakar, and the islands, this is your moment, too. Not just to admire the fire, but to feed it. Invest in sovereignty bonds. Mentor youth in engineering, media, finance. Challenge the narrative. Amplify the truth. Show the world that black wealth means more than spending power. It means production, protection, participation. Because if gold can be reclaimed, then so can land, so can water, so can culture, so can destiny. A woman in Kiaka places her thumbprint on a cooperative charter. A young boy carries books home from the school funded by gold revenues. A flag flutters not from conquest, but from confidence. And somewhere far away, maybe in Atlanta, maybe in Marseille, a man watches this story and says to himself,
It's time to come home, not just in body, but in mission. If you wear the gold, protect its source. If you come from this soil, rise with it. If you believe in freedom, walk beside those who mine it with their hands and their hearts. This is Kiaka. This is Burkina Faso. And this is how sovereignty shines.